Um, okay. Yeah, I'm just going to say, this is going on to record so that people who aren't able to join the call can go and watch the call afterwards, or you might want to watch a replay of it. So the topic for today is looking at how we can identify patterns in scans. So this is something that started, quite a few years ago. And sometimes you can get, a client comes in and you scan them and you spend ages going through the scan with them and they're like, what does all that mean? And, we always get those, see some of you nodding, always get those clients that sometimes they'll go, oh, that's amazing. How does it know all that? And others would like sit there and they're like, I just don't know. I don't know what are you talking about? What does that actually mean? Because I came in and I've got this, really bad IBS, and you're telling me, there's something going on in my nervous system. So where's the connection? What is it? And what I've found with working with practitioners over the years and being part of the training team is that if we can get a client to really, sorry, someone's just put a comment in and just lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. If we can get clients to really identify and take ownership, then we've got a better chance of them staying with the system, staying with the course. And I've been doing this for a few years myself as a practitioner. Haven't been seeing a lot of clients just recently because of a change of circumstances in my personal life. But what I have found is that I'm not always looking for new clients, because the clients I have want to stay with me. They don't come every month because, once they've kind of got to that point whereby they feel a change and they feel much better and more in control of their lives. But then I put them onto like a maintenance program, and they want to come back because they just love what the scan brings up. They love how the pharmaceuticals make them feel, how my health makes them feel. So it's identifying patterns in the scan that we can then share with clients, and they go, oh my God, that's amazing. How does it know that? And they just take ownership of that. So this is what this call today is about. You've all been through the training. Well, I hope you've all been through the online training. Some of you may have been fortunate enough to have some in-person training at some point. So I can't teach you what you've already learned, but this is kind of more of a refresher, and I want to make it more sort of an interactive call today. So before I start my PowerPoint presentation, I just want to just ask a couple of questions, really. I mean, who already uses, we don't need to unmute yourselves for this, guys, who already uses patterns and identifying patterns in your practice? I know some of you do. Okay, hi, Eliza? Are you going to take yourself off mute, my darling? Hi. Eliza. Okay, can you bring your microphone down so we can hear you?
Sorry, I'm not switched on at all, am I?
That's okay.
Here I am. It's Eliza.
Eliza, hi, Eliza. Hi, yeah. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Yeah, I've been using this for about 11 years or so now, and it took me a long time to really start to see the patterns and work with the patterns. And I'm a naturopath by trade, and I think that's helped. But I'm still really interested in understanding a bit more about that. And there is a big gap between scans with a lot of my clients. And so you do kind of lose the feel of it a bit from scan to scan. So if there's any tips around that too, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of just a starting point where how we can develop these, these calls together. I'm kind of here to, just to push the buttons and to, help you guys to connect as well. So anybody else would like to offer some words here? Peter?
You were talking, so I missed a bit of it. You were saying, do we see patterns in the nest? Is that what you were saying?
That's correct, yes. Yeah.
Yes, I've done that. I've been probably doing nest for over 16, 17 years myself.
Oh, wow.
And I actually trained with people where I got all Peter's notes. So I actually will have all of his background notes as well, with all the advanced training showing you the connections between it. So Plus, I'm also a psychologist, a naturopath, a reflexologist. So therefore, I can bring in all of that stuff into each area. And very often when I'm working with clients, because every one of my clients, even though I'm a naturopath, every client is tested, every client. It's not a choice. That's part of the program while they're with me, is that they get tested with NES. It's amazing. They'll all say, you know, are you psychic? How did you know that? And I find the patterns are a great way of picking up emotional trauma and emotional conditions in men when they're not as open to discuss. Whereas women, you can kind of work with women, they will come through, but men are a little harder, and the nest gives them that opening, you know, where you can ask the questions to get the answers you're looking for.
No, absolutely. Men, you know, I mean, it's interesting with men. And sorry, the gentleman on the call. We're not having a, we're not having a go at you guys, but it's, you know, you're right. They don't often. They're not very good with opening up with emotions. And you know, as obviously as you know, working with psychology, I mean, you know, it's like, well, why do I need to discuss that? You know, and they kind of like, they just push it down and push it down and push it down, don't they? They sort of compound that down. And then when you scan them in all these different areas, come up, they're like, wow. And it kind of gets them to start to, I suppose, evaluate more and to be more in touch with their own emotions and feelings. So yeah, it's thank you for sharing it with us. I mean, you've been around, probably sort of came into NES about the same time, I think. So great to have you. Is it Peter?
Peter.
Peter, okay.
Peter. The other thing I was just going to say is sometimes also, apart from it packing down, they're not aware that something that happened to them at 7 or 8 is causing the condition they're living with now at 70. That's what they don't get, the connection. And I had a man from Eastern Europe who was showing the shock, the visual shock and the auditory shock, etc. And I asked him about it, and he said no, he couldn't, because he was from Eastern Europe. And I'm thinking war zones, blah blah blah. He said no. He came back the week following and said, "Do you think that's because I saw my father try to kill himself when I was 8?" And then he said, also, my mother had mental conditions, and 3 times I had to push her into a pool when she lit herself on light on fire. Now, these were when he was a little baby boy, 7 or 8. He's now in his 70s with very, very serious illnesses. And he just doesn't see the connection because he's lived through it. He thinks he's okay. So, the nest helps you get that, people that come in that, I've had women that come in with horrific sexual abuse, because I'm also highly trained in sexual abuse with working with the police. And they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. But NES can actually clear it without having to talk about it. And that's the beauty of it. It's fantastic.
Do you know what? You've actually just, as you said, all of that, I had a shiver go up my spine, because when you said auditory and visual shock, some of you are aware I lost my husband 6 months ago. Very, very sudden. I found him, and then all I can remember that morning was the paramedics, and everyone was saying sorry for your loss. And my scan, it took me about 10 days, 2 weeks before I had the courage to do a scan. I don't know why. I was taking lots of love and inner peace and ESR, and visual and auditory shock came up on my scan. So if there's ever anyone out there who goes, this is mumbo jumbo, you know what, you just need to trust in it, don't you? Just absolutely need to trust in it, because I don't, anyway, enough said about that. But thank you very much for sharing that with me. So I think really I've had some other questions as well, really, but I think one of the things that that I wanted to ask is, really, I think, you guys have already covered it, is looking at what benefit is this to the client? Because for me, I always think that if they can see a pattern and identify just 1 or 2 things in their scan, they go, okay, this is, because this is real. How does it know that? And you're right, Lisa, because sometimes people don't want to talk about things that happened, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago, because it is too painful. But if we can clear that emotional that stuck energy around that, then things can start to change and people can start to move forward with their lives. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up and do a share screen and put this. This is an interesting client. Let me open up let me do the share screen first of all, and then we can. Okay, this is the one I need. So slideshow beginning. I'm just going to take us out of the equation for a minute, so we can just see so I can't actually see anyone at the moment. So if you've got a question as I'm going through this, you'll need to take yourself off mute and please ask me the question. So I've able to kind of like hit. You can all probably still see me and still see some of each other, but I can't see anyone apart from what my screen tells me. So so really, yeah, this presentation is called Identifying Patterns, believe it or not. Okay, so this is one of my clients. Now, the reason I'm doing it on PowerPoint and not sharing the scan, because I don't want to share the personal data of this particular client. So this lady came to me in her mid-40s, and she has got, she was finding that she was really struggling with her workload. She works in marketing. This was during this whole sort of lockdown period that we had. So she was working from home, kind of quite isolated. I felt like all she was doing was actually working. If she did take some time out, then she felt guilty. If she wasn't spending time in front of her computer, then she was watching lots of TV. She was finding that she was forgetting a lot of stuff, feeling really tired, and just, you know, kind of like almost like, I think she described more like that sort of fluffy head syndrome. Okay. On a physical, she was presenting with feeling bloated, cold hands and feet, constipation. She was getting, finding she was getting dandruff, even ear infections, and she was getting patches of eczema on her body, which she hadn't had for a few years. So that was her background. So immediately when I'm looking at this, you know, looking at what she's presenting with, there's a lot of different areas on there. But first of all, I'm thinking, okay, well, is there going to be what's causing the stress in her life? She actually came from Eastern Europe as well. So, you know, kind of like there's always that you know, that sort of question mark in your head as to what sort of challenges may she have experienced as a child or as a young adult before she came over to the UK with her family. You know, so there's always that kind of like that point. But you know, this is somebody I've just met. It's not the opportune time really to start discussing that, because she's not here to discuss what happened to her when she was growing up. She's here because she just doesn't feel good, and someone's referred her you know, to a nurse practitioner because it could potentially help her. Okay, so already looking at this, I need to sort of start looking at, okay, how can, you know, what can I expect to see in the scan? Now, we can't use the scan to diagnose, okay, because that's not what it's doing. But what it's often doing is showing us where the body needs support, which will help to clear some of these things that she's presenting with. But if I can show her on the scan patterns of that we sort of relate back to what she's presenting with, she's going to go, wow, okay, take ownership, and what do I need to do next? Okay, so that's what she's presenting with. Has anyone got any questions about any of that? As I said, you will need to unmute yourselves because I've taken everyone out from my eyesight at the moment. Okay. Okay, so you'll notice I use the gold stars because I like clients to go in and have a look at their scans after. So that's the only reason you'll see some gold stars on there. Okay, and these usually relate to the nutraceuticals that we've actually chosen as part of this protocol. So the energy source screen is always an interesting one, because I think that this is where you can really start to build that relationship with the client and get them to understand, you know, if you've got, you know, if you've got areas coming up with day and night, you know, obviously looking at these circadian rhythms, get quite excited when you see BFA coming up. because that's a really great infraceutical to get, start working and bring people back into balance. Okay, so often when someone's coming in, I was finding that, this lady, everything she was presenting with, it's putting her back into balance so we can start that healing process. Okay, so she's kind of like just out of sync with the world around her. Okay, so if I move on, we can see that we've got 2 areas coming up within BFA. And Ness has really made this a lot simpler for us now to start to look at patterns, because obviously we've got the patterns on the recommendation screen, but sometimes, you may be that you've gone in and there's sort of 3 or 4, 5, 5 patterns. Sometimes you're like, well, which one is it? So I don't generally tend to address those until I've gone through the scan myself. Okay, so the equatorial axis, we think about, we're looking at the middle, organs in the middle of the body. It's looking at metabolic processes, including energy production and sugar regulation. Okay, also detoxification. Okay, ability to absorb trace minerals from food. So think about, she's having some issues with her skin. Okay, so perhaps there's the malabsorption going on. Okay, so it's all these little things that we can pick up. So this is, we're not sort of going, doing a deep dive at this point. We're just looking at the primary matches. Okay, if we look at the vertical axis, we're looking at autonomic nervous system. Okay, so blood pressure, heart rate variability, and sleep. Feels bones, joints, and muscles. So we're seeing that could be related to dizziness. Okay, heart palpitations, sleep troubles, which relate to symptoms of long-term stress, can also be affected by geopathic stress. So then, it could be that we sort of do a deeper dive into a home environment or a work environment. Okay, not actually addressing that at this point, was looking at those to see where those patterns are and what I can identify for the client of what's going on in her energy fields. Okay. Okay, moving on to onto the drivers. So we now refer this to energy strength, but I'm old school, so I kind of still look at the call them the drivers. So looking at circulation. Okay, so if you think about one of the things that she was presenting with, cold hands and cold feet. Okay, so could that be a possible match there? Also think about circulation in the flow of life. So often when people are coming up with circulation, they're kind of like stuck in the, basically got stuck, and it's like they're doing the same thing and they can't get off of that, almost like can't get off that hamster wheel. Okay, so perhaps life isn't offering her the opportunities that she perhaps needs, okay, in order to be able to drive her forward. So always kind of consider the aspect of the creative cycle when you're looking at the drivers, and you'll see all those in the life journey screens. Okay. Onto the energy flow. So we've got quite a few high priorities within the integrators. Okay, so Peter Fraser often used to talk about, if you've got a lot of integrators showing as priorities, you need to look at the whole integration process. Okay, so we always think about those, those channels of information through the meridians, and things are not communicating properly. Okay, so it's almost like she's kind of stuck and doesn't know how to move forward. Okay, so if we look at the biogenic matches or primary biogenic matches with each of these, so we've got the large intestine meridian. So again, we've got a connection with the nervous system. Okay, we're looking at the frontal lobes, thalamus, and sensory cortex. Again, we've got this in large intestine function and mineral absorption. Okay, then we look at the emotions. Okay, hope and despair, self-worth and guilt. So I'm kind of starting to build a picture up of potential patterns within this lady's scan. Okay, if you've got any questions as I'm going through this, please, please do take yourselves off mute and ask me. Okay. The gallbladder. Okay. Gallbladder in Chinese medicine is often linked with decision making. Okay. So looking at patterns again, we've got digestion, gallbladder function, motor cortex and grey matter function. We've got emotions, so there's some emotional blocks here. Is there some anger going on, some bitterness? Okay, so again, all of these, you know, connections and thinking, okay, how's this all piecing itself together? Because if I went through the scan in immense detail with this client, it would be extremely interesting. But often when, you know, you've done that and you've probably spent, you know, when you first get started, you can spend an hour and a half easily on a scan, can't you, with clients? And it's just like, wow, especially ladies who, this is really interesting. But when they leave you, they probably retain 20% of that information. The following day, they probably retained 10% of that information. Okay, but it was still interesting. Looking at the triple burner meridian, mostly connected with thyroid gland, thyroid function. Okay, so looking at those sort of cavities, how the body is able to store energy. Look at this, we're looking at hormones and body temperature regulation. Okay, let's look at the emotions on here. So we've got feeling blue. Okay, expression. Okay, I'm just kind of pulling out some of the emotions that I felt from this client. Okay. Heart protection. So again, here we've got a link with the circulation system. Okay. Motor, visual and auditory regulation, looking at the midbrain. Okay. We're looking at the female sexual system. And then we're looking at our emotions again. So we've got some trust here going on. The big one here for me was two, with connection and blocked feelings. Okay, so I'm really starting to build up a picture of how I can best support my client. Okay, my primary aim is always to, what can I do to help this client really start to see some changes? Okay. Bone marrow, so stomach meridian, so stomach and digestion again. Okay, we've got the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. We've got our emotions, so looking at emptiness, suspicion. I think there's some areas of distress going on with her. Okay, and then this is always an interesting one that comes up, is the shock spleen meridian. Okay, so we're looking at, you know, exhaustion, looking at shock. Okay, looking at the connection with the spleen and lymphatic fluid. Sugar metabolism, so digestive, again, we've got digestive function, digestive enzymes, emotions, hope and security were the ones that really sort of jumped out at me with this particular client. Let's move on. So how often is it that we see, I know we don't necessarily need to go a deeper dive into the but I'm going to do this morning. The reason I starred ESR is because that just absolutely jumped out at me. This is what this client needs. Okay, but it was the fact that we saw 3 brain holograms, okay, showing as priorities. Okay, so let's take a deeper look at those. So let's look first at the cerebral medulla hologram. Okay, relates to shock and conflict around the theme of self-devaluation. Okay. If we go further in, we've got biting coming up around the teeth. We've got being overwhelmed. We've got profound loss, and we've got moving forward. Okay, so all these relate to obviously different parts of the body. So when we're looking at the brain holograms, we're seeing a bigger pattern of what possibly may have happened at some point that could potentially manifest as a physical, which is starting to manifest as physical in this lady, because of things that have happened in the past. And, you know, as like Peter said, you know, Peter said, you know, we don't have to do a, you know, sort of counselling session or psychotherapy session with these people. We're just helping body to clear those locked emotional connections so that we can start that healing process. So we don't have to go into a, you know, how do you feel about this? What, you know, let's go back to your childhood, what happened, and get people to relive things. But what we will see on a scan like this is, and I didn't need to discuss any of this with this client, okay, because it wasn't appropriate. I do have a background in counselling, but it's more to help people with drug and alcohol conditions rather than what's happened, you know, as a perhaps in their younger life. Okay, let's move forward and look at the cerebellum hologram. So it's shock and conflict around the theme of attack on one's integrity. Okay, so we've got a couple of twos coming up, but when we see a brain hologram that's orange or purple, it's the whole of that that's looking for support. Okay, so some areas going on in heart field and worry and argument. Okay, and then the last one, the cerebral cortex. So this is around territory and separation. This kind of alerted, you know, some points in, you know, what could have been going on. Okay, so we've got fear of attack. Again, we've got biting. So you'll see that some of these points will come up on two different holograms. We've got speak coming up. We've got loss and intimidation. Okay, so again, all of these are, when you click on any of these, I haven't gone into detail on this presentation, but when you click on any of these points, it will show you, it will tell you, you know, sort of potentially what that conflict could have been about. Okay, don't always need to address that with the client. If people want to look at the scan afterwards and look at their, you know, you can send them the full report that they can read about that. Some people will, some people won't, which is, you know, that's completely up to the client. But I don't need to go into full detail with someone. I can just see that on the scan myself. But my thought process is always to support them. Okay, so this, I've already, you know, I kind of suspected when the client came in that there was a lot of background areas that she was blocking. Okay, she kind of compounded down and it's kind of just, it's almost like, you know, when somebody is, they're not living, they're kind of like just surviving, that type of kind of like, you know, almost like a defeatist. You know, she knows she's got to work, to provide and to look after her family, but it was almost like that, you know, she's like just defeated. Everything about her just showed complete exhaustion, you know, almost like an emptiness. Let's have a look at ESR. So could help to relieve day-to-day stress and headaches. And stress can compromise nutrient absorption. So, you know, ESR may be a really good match for her in this particular instance. So, you know, this was one for me that, yeah, we definitely need to address ESR with the client. Okay. Emotions. So there was a lot of positive emotions. So, you know, you think, well, you know, we've got compassion, we've got joy, we've got trust, humility, appreciation. Now, sometimes they can show as a priority because perhaps, you know, there isn't any appreciation in her life. Perhaps she doesn't feel appreciated, okay, or she's not able to show appreciation. Okay, what about joy or trust? You know, it's not, because it's a positive emotion, it doesn't mean to say that they have an abundance of that. Okay, just always kind of like, you know, look at the other side of that to see, you know, where potentially there could be perhaps lack of joy in her life, lack of trust. Okay, trusting that, you know, things are going to get better, that she is going to start to feel better, that she's going to be able to cope and manage her life more. Okay, so sometimes I will spend some time, you know, talking about these emotions with clients if it feels appropriate. Okay. Let's have, I didn't actually show the negative emotions on here because there weren't actually any priorities, okay, which is always interesting. So let's have a look at the terrains. So we've got central nervous system, immunity 3, and 87 chronic fatigue. So I've starred ET0, central nervous system. So looking at the central nervous system and the myocardium, okay, can also can be related to mental confusion, poor learning processes, possibly for those people that may have been infected by childhood viruses. Okay, so even though she was in a sort of state of sort of defeat, her nervous system definitely needed some support. If we look at ET3, this can cause or be related to a trauma, okay, that's then created or challenged the body's natural immune system. Okay, so always think about, looking at doing sort of, understanding more about the terrains. It's not just, looking at pathogens, viral infections, etc. It's actually looking at how emotions may have had an impact on the body's natural immune system. So we're always looking to build that, to support the body's immune system. I think that some of you may have read the recent email that came out, the newsletter, looking at the connection with all the reports they've been doing at Harvard University about how stress traumas can have an impact on people's health and wellness. It's not just about keeping yourself active, making sure you're eating clean, meditation, things like that. It's actually looking at how we can support past traumas in the body. Okay, ET7, chronic fatigue, may be related to chronic exhaustion. Okay, can affect the central nervous system again, pituitary gland, thyroid. So again, we saw a connection with that. Looking at the small intestines. So again, it's that element connected with digestion. Okay, visual cortex, eyes, etc. Okay. The stars. So the primary match with the memory imprinter. Okay, looking at all 4 parts of the brain. Okay, and Peter used to refer to this as the brain driver. Okay, may affect our ability to express ourselves, to be clear in our identity. Okay, may assist in stopping feelings of panic while also supporting clearer mental functions, better reaction times. Okay, also appears to support fluid metabolism. Okay, looking at the energetic rejuvenators. So we've got sensory cortex, the bronchioles, bladder, hip joints, coronary vascular, and the feet. So I've just done a sort of a quick sort of points, so we know, familiar ourselves with what all these ER points are. Okay, so I pulled out sort of some of the higher patterns I looked at. So aligning individual identity, being in tune with yourself, and taking charge of your life. Okay, it's about being clear about who you are, not ignoring your true self. ER3, family issues and disruptions. It's that kind of desire to come away from people who are irritating us. ER14, ability to adapt to new circumstances, period of moving on, and reluctance to let go of old habits. So there was a kind of there was so many patterns that were sort of popping out for this client. It was like, wow, this is a lot of this is related to emotions. Okay? But is how. Yeah, so yes, okay, I'm going to stop on that one. ER27, about decisions about our next move. Okay, afraid to make a decision in case it is the wrong one. So it was almost like, I mentioned before, it's like she's kind of like, it's almost like she's stuck, and just kind of, it's almost like I'm not, again, it's not like being on that hamster with them. Coronary veins and artery field, so our emotional center. Okay, our emotional balance. Could be due to long-term emotional problems, taking everything at the heart being too serious. Okay, and the feet field represents grounding. When we're grounded and sure of ourselves, we move forward with a confident stride. So everything is like, just something that's creating about the way this client isn't able to move forward. Okay. Only included a couple of things on I think it's one screen on the environmental screen. Okay, and the reason I wanted this one is because I wanted to show you sometimes we need to look at the link to the related infoceuticals. So we've got the large intestine, heart protector, stomach, and spleen. Okay, so there were a few things that came up on her scan. Not a lot of high priorities in the environment screen. Okay, but it's always good to sort of do a deeper dive into those if you feel that's appropriate. But this is something I was able to share with her. So because of her sort of digestive challenges, we always saw that in some of the parts of the scan, everything's sort of like it's that area of what is how her body is able to absorb nutrition from the food that she's having. So her diet was pretty, was pretty good. She need to make some changes. We can all make some changes, can't we, from time to time? But it was how it was absorbency. Okay, so base metabolic rate and pH balance, and then a malabsorption. So we've got that link to integrated on large intestine, EI7, the gallbladder, EI11, stomach. There's that ESR again, and the equatorial axis. Okay, so when we can, sorry guys, I'm just going to put myself away from the note because my delivery has just turned up. And literally, I will be just be a couple of minutes. So just bear with me for a moment. I'm back. Sorry, my apologies for that. Okay, right, yeah, so I'm just saying, so when we can share this with someone, and then they can, again, it's like this taking that ownership, isn't it? So that's kind of like a quick, snapshot looking at her scan. There were a lot of patterns, and it's like the question is, where do we start? And as I said before, so how can my objective is how can I best support the client? Now, even though we were kind of in this kind of lockdown state, and there's some of you had, different levels of lockdown. We had that in, over here in England. But there's always way around things, aren't there? So I actually was able to see clients in person from time to time. Because I work from home, so I've got my clinic at home, so it was a lot easier for me to be able to do that. So I always like to look at some of the life journey screens, and one of the ones I like to look at primarily is the transformation. And I don't often see this many priorities coming up on someone's. I know this isn't the chakra system, but it relates to the chakras. Okay. As I mentioned, if we're going through the scan, it's like she's stuck, she can't move forward. And it was like that, she was just like, you just want to just help someone to sort of elevate them. And so what I did, I actually ran the transformation cycle for her. And as part of her treatment plan. So she had 27 minutes of the transformation cycle. If you haven't, used that for yourself or with clients, it's a great one. It's a great one to use. So if we look at what this, how Ness looks at what the transformation is about, okay, it's in the life memory centers of the body. Okay, so traditionally they're called chakras, but from our perspective, we look at them related to more life memories and recollection. Okay, so looking at releasing blame, bringing understanding and resolution to past shocks and traumas. Okay, so those memories will become integrated. Okay, so we can start to transform our lives and transcend difficulties. So by transforming negative and disruptive memory associations, a profound positive effect on the health state can be achieved. Okay, because this is often the case of memory of disease and injury, both physical and emotional, can upset somebody's health. Okay, so this is, really profound here. Who we are now is a reflection of who we were and what we experienced in the past. Okay, evolving the understanding of the past allows us to experience a different perspective of the now and how we move into the future. So I actually was able to factor in half an hour extra for this client to have a My Health treatment using the transformation cycle on the My Health. Okay, which also allowed me to then spend some extra time looking at the scan and making sure that I was supporting the client the best way that I could. So kind of call this, let's just sort of simplify things. So I sort of take all my notes. So, the equatorial axis, and this is the information I can share with the client. Ability to absorb trace minerals, which is that having an effect on the dandruff, on the eczema that she's experiencing. Vertical axis, long-term stress. Circulation driver, our emotional state, okay, can affect the circulation of our blood, and healthy blood flow can manifest in skin conditions. So, we're seeing skin absorbency, we're seeing stress, large intestine, we've got the nervous system, it's regulating our emotions, sensory relay, okay. Again, we've got the large intestine function, mineral absorption, bronchial skin, stomach and digestion, nourishment, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, spleen, we've got pancreas, sugar metabolism, digestive function, digestive enzymes, collapse, shock, exhaustion. So can you see what I'm doing here? I'm actually creating, without looking at the patterns on the recommendation screen, I've gone through myself. And this is how I kind of trained myself with using NES, because I just needed to understand how I could. There was so much information to read and to learn, and I was like, sometimes I just felt quite overwhelmed, especially when you get so many priorities coming up with a client. So this is what I learned to do, was looking at the help files, and I used to have them all printed out, and I would go through and I would pull out bits. It's simpler now because we've got these primary biogenetic matches that come up, when you sort of hover your mouse over. So it is a simpler thing, but this is something that I can quickly share with a client. I might not necessarily need to share, around the 3 brain holograms, so self-evaluation, attack on one's integrity, themes of territory and separation. Okay. ESR, was, when we've got too much data coming in and we just can't process it. Okay, again, it can help with nutrition absorption. T0, central nervous system, mental confusion, core learning processes. Looking at immunity. So, generally associated with, immunity following some form of trauma. Okay, so we're looking at, the primary, match patterns that I'm seeing is malabsorption, and I'm seeing trauma. Okay, but she's come more for day-to-day stress, not being, feeling sort of as though she just can't. There's feelings of guilt, not managing things. They've got chronic exhaustion, okay, and memory imprinter about being clear of our identity and how we can express ourselves. So this is what I was able to share with her. When we looked at the patterns within her scan, so this is where it can, if I look at the pattern before I start going to the scan, which, and there's no reason why, why you wouldn't do that. I might not see other things, I don't know. So I tend to not look at this until I've actually looked at my own patterns. But this, I often use this to make sure that we've chosen the correct infoceuticals for the client. Okay, so cardiovascular system's coming up. Okay, which she certainly wasn't presenting with. Okay, however, we do need to take that into consideration. Nervous system, absolutely. That was a sort of a primary pattern throughout her scan. Intestines and I suppose malabsorption together, really. In effect, if you look at the infoceuticals, there's quite an overlap with those infoceuticals at how we can support the intestines and malabsorption, and then eyes, vision, and visual processing. Okay, so those were the the primary matches within the NEST system. And then these were her infoceuticals. So we chose BFA, circulation driver, large intestine meridian, stomach meridian, and spleen meridian. So interestingly, I didn't choose to support the brain holograms. Okay, she had ESR as well in addition to these. But these felt the right combination for her, especially as I'd run the transformation program. So I started to create that, so she was getting a lot more centered already. Okay, now I'm not going, this is the client, I'm not going to play this video because you won't actually hear you won't actually hear it. For some reason I can't get the audio to play through Zoom. I don't know why. I tried to figure it out, and so, but she basically was saying it was a testimonial that she actually recorded for me, which is very, it's like trying to get testimonials of clients. But just after that one treatment, I never can't use treatment, but after that one session with me, she was feeling so much brighter. Everything felt clearer. She'd actually, I mean, it was interesting. Even though she, was talking about, supporting her eczema and bloating, circulation, things like that. She didn't really talk about that in terms of, it's almost like that kind of just righted itself anyway. But she was more, she felt calmer, clearer. She was much happier. You can see her eyes are bright. She's got a beautiful smile. She didn't come in looking like that when she came to see me. So I'm going to stop share, and I'd like really to open up to any questions, observations that you may have. So you will need to unmute yourselves in order to, so we can actually hear you. I've got some chats coming up, just need to figure out how to look at those. Okay, oh, there's a few chats coming up. Okay, so yeah,
Barbara has asked, can anyone talk about how to proceed if someone has no reaction to even the max dose of infoceuticals?
Okay, so you will sometimes you can give someone some infoceuticals, do the My Health, give them some some information on how to support with other areas of their lives, because we can't just look at going, okay, just infoceuticals and just the My Health. Okay, we do need to look at other areas within their lives. If someone's sitting there and perhaps not getting any fresh air, not engaging with positive conversations, that's choosing the wrong diet. We did need to address those areas as well. And sometimes it can take a little bit longer for some clients. Okay, and maybe that other people are noticing that they're not necessarily noticing themselves. So often when you're taking notes for clients, it's always making sure we're keeping comprehensive notes, because when people come to you and they go, I've got this, this, and this, and this, okay, and then they come back and they no, I can't really feel any change, but then they mentioned that they've perhaps started a new class, or they've gone out for dinner, and then they look happier. So actually things have changed, but they haven't noticed. Okay, so it's like when you have a pain, when we have pain, we're kind of alerted that something's going on in the body, and we might go and see a chiropractor or a physio. We may have some massage, some cranial work, and then someone go, how's your pain now? And you go, What pain was that? Because you've forgotten. Okay, so it's people will see changes. Some people will have profound changes, and some people won't. I also remember, you know, when I first started out, I was looking for anyone I could practice on, and there was a young gentleman who used to come to me, and I like to use the My Health primarily off body, because I think it's just a really lovely opportunity for somebody to have a sort of complete relaxation and to start to connect. And as soon as I put the My Health on, he was like, oh my God, it feels amazing, it feels amazing. And I'm like, what is it you're actually feeling? Because even though I feel a connection with the My Health, I don't have the same reaction that you get. And he's like, it's like my whole body is tingling. Really? And that was like, oh, okay. So he sent lots of people to me because they've got to go see this lady. It's just incredible. And guess what? They didn't have that reaction either. So then I had to meet their expectations. It wasn't the fact that the My Health wasn't supporting them. It's just the fact that they didn't have that strong reaction, okay, that he'd had. Okay. Does that make sense?
Trish, the question you asked, Trish, the question you asked was it if they don't have any reaction from the maximum of the infoceuticals. Is that what you said? I can't hear you. You turned off. I can't hear you.
Yes, that's what was the question. Yep. It was if they don't have a reaction to the max dose. So
I have never had that happen. Never. Because what I do is I will give it to them more regularly. I actually mix infoceuticals. Like even when somebody comes in incredibly stressed, I will say, take ESR on the hour for the first day. Then every 2 hours the second day, every 3 hours the third, and then 4 times a day until you see me again. So I will look at patterns that need to be also adjusted. If someone's coming in sick, they're in a sympathetic mode, so they've got to get their body down. So ESR is going to be used. I will also mix a lot of my infoceuticals, up to 4 or 5 of them in another bottle, you know, 1/5 of each, and have them use a spray. So I have never, ever had, if anything, I think you have to be careful the other way of doing too much. When I was working with some people in Western Australia, the lady had been recommended to have the dose of 6 drops, as it said, and she went into a tiz, and nobody asked her medical background. She'd had 3 different cancers that year. She could cope with 1 on her skin. So I think it's more that is the problem, rather than I can't see how you wouldn't be getting change if you're following it properly. That's just, you know, they're probably not combining, or maybe they need to add, I don't know, but I have yet to see that problem.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Peter, and thank you for sharing that, because some people, I think, you know, some people are, I can't really see any change, and they're kind of not motivated to continue. But it's not very often. But I think it's kind of, I suppose it's setting expectations for the client, isn't it? You know, because it's like, you know, when somebody, you know, someone's got a headache, you know, what they do, they go to the, you know, the bathroom cabinet, they grab a, you know, a paracetamol, aspirin, whatever it is they take, and that will then take away that pain. Okay, but it's not dealing with what's actually has created that. So I think with, you know, what we need to help clients to understand when we're working with, you know, with NES, is that we're actually helping to address what's created that environment, rather than just putting a, you know, sticky plaster on or taking the aspirin. And sometimes that, you know, when people are so used to going to their doctor, their GP, and getting something and go, okay, well, I don't have that anymore because I now take this tablet every day. So by the time they get to the age of 60 or 70, they're not just taking 1 or 2 tablets a day, they're now on probably 5 or 6 meds every day. You know, so it's kind of, sometimes we just need to help clients to understand that we're looking at health in a different way. Barbara, you've got a question for us. Hi.
Yeah, well, that was my question about the max drops, and thanks, Peter. That's I'm really pleased to hear your idea about that. And the person I tried it on was me, because that was right at the start when I first did my training. And so I was going up on the dose, and I got to 30 drops a day of everything, and nothing happened. And so I just kind of felt a bit let down myself, and that affected my confidence in helping other people, because I always like to try stuff myself and see if it works. So maybe it's just me. I did look after another lady at the same time, and she was getting lots of reactions on a sort of 9 or 15 mils a day. Like, anyway, so it was working for her. Yeah, that was my experience, and other things took over my life, so I've sort of left it on the shelf, but I'm really keen to get back involved again.
You haven't been taking your nest, Barbara?
No, not for years. That was the first few
Oh,
months.
wow. That's
That
so
was when I
sad.
did the
It's
training
so sad that you left it because of
Cyril.
that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just was expecting something, anything, headache, anything. Nothing happened. And, maybe I should have gone on for a few more months. And anyway, yeah, so Cyril Burke, I did the training with him, and it was very powerful. It was really impressive, and, I had really high expectations. So I haven't given up. I'm just trying to start off from scratch again.
I used to be the director of training at the Zap House. So I had Cyril and Rose, yes. And I actually did the advanced training of Ness all over Australia. So yeah, but it's very much, I have had no one. And for myself, if I'm stressed, I'll take a half a bottle of ESR. I'll drink a half a bottle, no problem at all. No, I'm serious. But when you understand, I mean, I've had people ask me here, and I've said to them when they're first starting, please, maybe don't go into the ESs at first. Just stay and get yourself used to the beginning. And one girl rang me, she said, oh, I told him to have ES8, every hour. Do you think that'll affect him? I went, yes. Yeah, that's really major. Yes. He could go into complete collapse. I said, ring him and tell him that, you've reassessed it and you think it might be better for him to do this. There are certain ones that they're not going to kill you, but they're going to knock you majorly. And you don't want that with a client. You want repair happening. Yeah. So start again, Barbara. Yep. I scan myself every week and I adjust my infoceuticals every week.
Right. Okay.
No, seriously. I'll have clients on sprays and they'll come in if their infoceuticals moving. I may add another spray to that connection and keep it that way. Yeah.
Peter, can I just ask you? Sorry, Barbara, I just jumped in there. Sorry.
Trisha's going to get me back on track, so
good.
I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Peter, can I just quickly ask you, you keep referring to sprays. So are you getting clients to just apply that to their skin then?
No, look, I started working with the spray concept probably about 5-6 years ago because I found, very first, when we first started, it was supposed to be one and you wait 10 minutes and 1 and 10 minutes. That was the first original thing. Then they said you could do a couple, and now it's kind of, you can have 5 or 6 at the same time. And I just found that it was, well, it's more convenience of clients as well. Because trying to drop and do that with 5 different infoceuticals was just too difficult. So I bought bottles and spray tops, and I actually will say I might put 5 bottles into one spray, and I will do Trish is shaking her head, she knows I do this stuff, and I put them in and then a spray on, and then they'll have those 5 bottles to take home and they will refill, so it'll last them probably about a month to 2 months anyhow. And they spray, and it's an easy form of getting it in. They can just hold it, just 1, 2, 3.
Okay,
that's it. Yeah. It's very easy. Sometimes they may also have 2 of those. If they're traveling, they'll have the BFA, the travel one. So they'll have that as well. And then they'll have the one repairing themselves. So they could be working. And it's a lot easier to get those type of sprays in, or those treatments in on 2 sprays. And I can have basically 5 infoceuticals in each.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I like that idea. I don't know how Harry would react to that idea, but I really like that idea. But I know what you mean. It's like, when I first got started, I mean, I think you probably introduced drivers after about day 5. And now we're going, do you know what, just stick them all in together, off you go. And I've actually found by getting clients to mix them, they're more compliant to taking them.
Well, well, Peter Fraser, he said there was no problem mixing in pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
He actually said that way back. There's no problem having them intermixed.
Yeah.
The thing is with it, I don't use, say, if there's a BFA showing, I wouldn't go BFA and also add an ES in it in a first treatment. That wouldn't be, I've got to look at what's presenting and what's showing in this, what they're presenting with, what's showing in this, and how I can see the connection and how that needs to be treated from the information I'm getting. So, you know, it could be if somebody is incredibly, I have 29 people at the moment coming off antidepressants. So I'm not necessarily going to be working with them, you know, using the ESs or any of that stuff at the moment. We've got to get them off antidepressants. So you start using things like, you know, ED, you know, the heart one, ED6, ESR, BFA, polarity, these things to actually center them, calm them and control them, and also ED4, the nerve ones. So I might throw those in, and that will be a connection with what I'm working with. And like I said, I've got 29 people coming off. They're all off antidepressants now. Wow. And one of them has just come off and she was on it for 30 years. Yeah, it's not hard. It's not hard when people are educated how to do it and that it can be done. And they feel very supported with it. That's the thing. So it's, well, I've been doing it for what? I've been doing the mix. I don't know. What are we doing, Trish? I've been buying heaps. I mean, I've been doing it for probably, you know, 6-7 years before even, before even combinations became valid. And I have amazing treatments. And my clients don't come every month. My clients come weekly. Okay. Until they're right, until they're stable, until they're right, they need that connection.
Yeah, I think when you talk, when you're looking obviously at that level, but I think, you know, I think as well, I think for you, I mean, you're obviously extremely good at reading your clients, aren't you?
Yeah.
And that actually, you know, that absolutely shows. I know Barbara was giving you a hand of applause then, absolutely, because that's, you know, getting 29 people or getting 2 or 3 people of antidepressants is, you know, that's kind of commendable. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Being able to do that, we need to be able to have an understanding or a background in fields of trauma responses and mental health and wellness. So not a lot of people that come into NES have got that understanding, but NES is a great support in actually being able to build up somebody's energy field. If you've got that understanding of what trauma is and you've been in a trauma response field, say whether it be a psychologist or a counsellor or working within the police force or the social work sectors, if you've had to work with people on hand in those situations and then you get your hands on something like the NEST system and you're able to see what it does and how it presents, you will clue onto it quite quickly because you can see what's happening within the patterns. You can see what's happening with the brain holograms, and you are able to see the responses within the clientele straight away, like you've experienced, Peter. So, you know, having all of that come together is fantastic, and it is a benefit to be able to have the background experience in life itself. And then,
Patricia, I think that needs to be pushed. You know, I've had people, there's one practitioner up here on the coast that told people they had a problem with their cerebral medulla. And I said, why? What gave you? Oh, it was showing purple. I went, that does not mean you have an issue with your cerebral medulla.
I know.
You know what I mean? And I said to her, if you want to comment on those things, and there's nothing wrong with it, I said, go and do some study. It's like the NEST has everything there for us. It has the whole lot if we read it. If you want to study, look at the nutrition stuff, go and study something. You don't have to do a nutritional course, but go and study it. If you want to do the other, I mean, a lot of these kids are coming through young, 2 years and they have their counselling, 4 years and they can have naturopathy. Go and do some research behind them and they'll have it. And then NEST is, it's just the most incredible tool. It really is.
Yep.
Sorry, I get passionate about
with NEST. Yeah, I do. I do too. So I understand that. Being able to, building on top of our studies at all times is fantastic on top of what NEST is, because we've got so many other modalities that we can utilize with it. Yeah, absolutely. Go and study more nutrition. Absolutely. And then you can actually compare the nutrition to the nest scans, working with your clientele. Everything does tie in together over time. The more educated people become in so many different fields, then we are actually able to see these things present within the patterns of every single scan when we're scanning people around us. And anybody who's been working with Nest for years and they've got many different components of many different modalities and they're tying it in, that is pretty much what I see most practitioners doing who have got 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5 modalities. They're tying it all in together. And they are able to read the patterns quite easily. But yes, everybody does get stuck in finding those patterns. And if you have not been doing the regular scans, it's hard for people to see them. So if we all come together.
Yeah, and sometimes the patterns can be quite hidden, or they don't, you know, you see it on the recommendations and it's like, well, it doesn't actually relate to what's going on. But then you actually dig a bit deeper, then you'll see that. But I think, you know, really for me, I always kind of look at the pattern. I go, okay, what information can I share with a client that they're going to be able to digest, they can take ownership of, you know, and that's how I want how I prefer to use that. You know, this is kind of my experience, and it's you know, Peter, thank you so much. I mean, you've got actually more experience than I've got with working with Nest, and obviously, you know, because of your background, and I don't come from a health and wellness background. I come from, you know, a different sort of more of a business background. But I've done added modalities on so I can support people more, and I'm always constantly learning and developing. So I really appreciate, you know, you sharing that with us. I think it's you know, the objective of these calls really is to sort of kind of bring, you know, to bring you together and kind of learn from each other, really, because that's what we're here for, you know. And just to share experiences, share stories, and, you know, and if we can motivate people to go, do you know, I'm just going to, like Barbara, you know, okay, I'm going to get going again with Nest because you bought into it for a reason, and we just need to help you to keep, you know, to keep that motivation going. Because sometimes, you know, there's always people in life who go, oh, I tried that. Oh, I tried that. Or you get that call and they go, oh yeah, you're my last hope. And you're like, great. Because it's almost, there's those people that seem to be out there who want to prove that nothing will work for them because they're just unique, because their identity of who they are and their sick, you know, and this sick person identity is just part of, they can't let go of that, and they don't want to let go of that, you know. So we're always going to have situations like that, you know, and you're all going to meet those clients at some point, you know, or you might even have family members like that, you know, friends, because they've just taken on this identity, which is sad. It's life. Yeah,
I think that's the responsibility of them. I think that's what us as practitioners have to learn, to realize it's not us, it's them, and let them walk away.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We need to let them walk away because that's their journey. I actually have a doctorate in education, so I actually come from a business and an educational background as well. And I just feel Ness. I mean, I'm an advocate of Ness. The visual aspect of Ness is also something clients just love. They love seeing the comparisons and, oh my gosh, I don't have so many reds this time. I don't, because I have red to make it stand out. I don't have so many reds this time. And am I supposed to have more greens? And what does this mean? You know, they love seeing that because they love seeing their progression, you know. And will I ever get all greens? Probably no. Probably no. You know, you won't, because I mean, it's we always have things happening every week or whatever happens to us. So that visual aspect of Ness is a real proving ground for a lot of people. Yeah. That they see change, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that compared scans is something that we can look at on a future call, and how you can use that to help clients you know, to move forward. Definitely. Yeah. Has anybody else got any thoughts or, you know, some feedback? Is this the sort of level that you're looking for? You know, is it what else would you like to see on these calls? How we can develop this, because we're going to be doing this every second month. Yeah, if you just if you want to put it in a chat, that'd be fantastic. If you want to open up your microphones and share some thoughts with us, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, we're happy to. I know I'm happy to jump in on these calls like every month or every second month and keep this going, because as we could see here tonight, we've got a couple of practitioners, they're connecting. And this is the main reason for bringing everyone together. So then we can come in, have a chat, talk about what NES is, and start discussing where you actually want the support, what questions do you have. So I always state it to everybody. No question is a silly question. Always ask it, because if you're thinking it, so is everybody else. If you're there, like we've got a group of, we've had nearly up to 15 people tonight, which is fantastic. So when we've got one person asking that question, we would actually, you know, we've got one person asking that question. There's probably another 5 or 6 in the group who were wanting to ask the exact same thing. I can say, Barbara would like to say something.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Well, firstly, thank you so much for everybody putting it together and being part of it. And I thought the case presentation was really good. Thanks, Helen. And I'd really appreciate seeing various different cases, and even with children, perhaps. And the thing you said about with men, that, you know, they're not talking about things, which we all know to be so spot on. Like I'd really like to see a bit more of that. I think that would be
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I'll give that some thought. And one of the things that I did have, I shared with some of the UK practitioners a little while ago. I came across some, because all Peter Fraser's papers have been filed on a sort of a secure server that lives in a cloud somewhere, and I was delving for something during lockdown, thinking there's got to be. I can't remember what I was looking for, and I came across this really interesting article that Peter actually wrote about the stars, and kind of taking a deeper dive into those. So perhaps we could look at that for the next month. But yeah, I know looking at different scans and you know. And yeah, it's always it's interesting to do that, and you know, especially I think the children as well. You know, it's obviously, you know, especially babies can't communicate, you know, what's happened. I did any of you watch the recording I did just over 12 months ago when my grandson was born? Okay, I'll dig that out. I think it's on the portal. And I'm just going to quickly share this quick story before we go, just to kind of aware that we've been on here for nearly an hour and a half, and you guys have got lives, and I need to start my working day. But my grandson was born just over 12 months ago, and due to errors by the team that were looking after my daughter, we very nearly lost him. You know, he was born by emergency cesarean, and they got him out within 16 minutes. He wasn't breathing. They got him breathing after, I think it was, I can't remember the timing, the other 3 or 4 minutes. He went onto a cooling mat because they were worried about brain damage. He developed sepsis and he developed pneumonia, and he was extremely sick. It's my first grandchild. I was distraught, to say the least. And I spoke to Harry, because Harry heard, and he rang me because he was worried about, you know, I literally went into fight or flight response mode, because I didn't know, there was nothing I couldn't. I saw him for literally 2 minutes before they wheeled him away to a special neonatal unit, and Harry said, you're just going to have to dig deeper on this one. You're going to have to support this little boy. So because I couldn't see him, I couldn't scan him, I couldn't get my health into him. You know, he was literally guarded, you know, by this team that were looking after him. And we just used intention to send intention to him. And he came out of hospital 10 days later. He is the most gorgeous, bouncing little baby boy ever. Cheeky. And, you know, he does have the pharmaceuticals now. He has the My Health. We had a bit of a strange episode of not suddenly waking up screaming in the middle of the night, which wasn't him. We gave him some peace drops, and literally within 2 days that had finished. So we were just adding peace to his morning milk, to his evening milk, and he's literally within 2 days he'd gone, whatever had disturbed him, because he can't tell us what's disturbed him. We don't know how he was or what he experienced when he was born, you know, because only he knows that, you know, but he can't communicate. He'll only be able to communicate that with us and talk about it, because but his body will know, his energy fields will know what happened to him. And I worked with a doctor a few years ago who is a GP, and his grandson was born. It was quite traumatic, and his grandson developed a squint. And the only two options to fix the squint was to either, you know, looking at sort of medically, was to either cut the muscles or inject with Botox. And both eyes were going in. And we had conversations, we met up, and he was into, you know, I'd done some research. He said, look, you know, do you think this could work? And I said, I don't know, but why not just give it a go? So we worked together, and this little boy, you know, we just followed the protocol, scanned every week. Didn't always change the pharmaceuticals every week, but we changed the My Health settings. And this little boy developed so many awful viral infections. It was basically his body went into sort of healing crisis. And every time his body went into a healing crisis, his eyes would actually get better. And then they'd come back again. And then it took 4 months. And he phoned me up and he went, right, send me the invoice. I'm having this system. And I said, okay, this is obviously good news. He sent me a photograph of before and after of his grandson. Sadly, the mother wouldn't allow us to use him as a case study, because, oh my God, it would. And he said, you know, it would be wonderful to be able to use this, but if we go too high, but put our house too high above the parapet, then we could get basically shot down. But he knew, and this little boy, he said, he's not just changed his life, he's changed everybody else's life. It's, you know, his parents, his grandparents, aunties, uncles, because he's gone from being a very introverted little boy. Because, you know, if you ever look at someone whose eyes aren't looking at you straight, it kind of messes with your brain, doesn't it? It's like, well, and you're not being, you know, you're not being intentionally rude, but you just don't know really where to look. Or it's like you're getting all these mixed messages. And can you just imagine being on the receiving end of that, even as a child, and then starting to get that ridicule? So he basically had become very introverted, and literally that changed this little boy's life. And he sent me the photographs, and I've still got them on. I keep them on my phone, because it just makes me, and I'd just like to go back and connect with that sometimes, especially when I'm like, you know what, this Peter Fraser did that. You know, he was the one that helped that little boy. I was just held his hand, or held his grandfather's hand, but he was the one that was able to help that little boy. You know, so it's just the power is just incredible. Peter, you've just unmuted yourself. Did you want to share something?
Trish, can you just with the people, where are they from? Where are people training? Like, where are these people practicing? Everybody, like Kathy and
as
John,
in everybody.
where do they practice? Where are the areas?
So okay, we have got practitioners New Zealand and Australia here with us tonight. It's Victoria, Queensland, Yes, we have
No,
got
I meant
Victoria.
which ones are in Queensland? Like,
Oh, so yes, we're at Queensland. So there's me and Jess at the office here in Queensland. And I think
Barb.
Billy is, and maybe Jody. Jody, are you in Queensland? Yep. So there's Barbara is here also. Barbara just informed us. Harvey Bay.
I'm in Victoria.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Oh, Billy's in Victoria. Sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Barbara would like to say something. So yeah, there are a lot of people here on the Sunshine Coast here, Peter. So many, many of us. Yes, Barbara.
Yes, I'm in Harvey Bay. I was wondering where everyone else is too. And the other thing I wanted to ask, when you said, Helen, about you've got to be careful what you claim to be able to do with Nest Health. Is there any problem if you were using it to help somebody who's had a vaccine injury? Would that be an issue?
Sorry, can you just go back to the start of the question? So I was just looking at the chat thing at the same time. Sorry, my brain was going.
I've got this.
Sorry, Barbara. Yeah.
This one will be applied to. We do have to be careful on what we state around vaccine injuries. We do have to be compliant to TGA regulations. We did have an issue at the beginning of the year. So if you're wondering about how we address this with clientele, we do not state that we heal, treat, or fix anything at any time. Okay. When it comes to vaccines, we've also got to be very careful on what we're actually saying to clientele. I'll be able to support you on how to deliver your practice with clientele who are coming to you with these issues and ensuring that it's within regulation. Because it is our job to support you in these areas to ensure that the language and the dialogue is compliant, so then things do not fall back on you as a practitioner. And then I'll be able to show you, if you're wanting to advertise or put an advertisement out there, you'll be able to talk to me about that too. But it's pretty simple. We do not heal, treat, or fix. But we can support the body field and the energy field of the individual with the Nest system. So we run a scan and then we can look at the patterns, look at the protocols, and the body is going to ask and show you where it needs to be supported. But we cannot be telling our any clientele that this is going to help them recover from a vaccine injury, because that is going to be going against TGA rules and regulations.
But you still can look after someone who appears to have had a vaccine injury, as long as you don't say that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Barbara, you can look
Then-
after anything. There's nothing you can't touch. Not a thing.
Okay. Right. I'm gonna. Sorry. I'm just quickly going through. So there's obviously asking about the atomizers. So Tricia said that you guys have got some in the office. Okay. So thank you all for your feedback. That the messages have come through, which is great. Appreciate that you coming onto the call and sort of being part of this. I hope it's been it has been sort of a good session for you. It's been valuable, and you've got something out of this today that you can take forward. I always think that if you can just, even just one thing you can take forward and move forward with, and go, oh, actually, there I learned that. That's that's great. And obviously some of it is being repeated. Because I don't know. What your level of understanding is in this, how long you've been around. Some of you sort of came in like Peter sort of 15, 16, 17 years ago, and got huge amounts of experience with it. So please do keep coming onto the calls, because what you can share with other practitioners is completely amazing and so valuable. So I really appreciate that, you sharing that with us. That'd be fantastic if you can continue. So nice messages coming through. And yeah, so thank you all. I will bid you a good evening. And I'm going to go off and enjoy the rest of my day. Winnie, thank you I didn't recognise you. Obviously, we met in 2009. So you reminded me in Dusseldorf. I think I remember that conference very well because we had a rock singer. We had a very interesting evening entertainment that day, yeah. And it was just it was a great conference, that one. If I say so myself. Yeah. Okay. Right. So thank you again, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Okay.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.